The hammer strikes before the sun rises. Sparks leap in the dark. The forge breathes, slow, glowing, alive. A blackened hand turns the bellows. The air groans, the coals pulse orange. Outside, the village still sleeps. Inside, iron wakes. This is the blacksmith's hour. Not the priest, not the miller, not the lord. Just a man, soot-covered and silent, shaping the metal that shapes the world. Across the hills, mist still clings to the trees. The first light of morning hasn't broken the horizon, but already the smith is at work. His body warm from fire, his eyes sharp from years of repetition. This is no noble profession, but it is necessary. No hinges open without him. No plough tills. No horse runs. No sword is drawn. There is no kingdom without the blacksmith. You will not find him in a hall of stained glass or cloistered in a library. You'll find him here, where the roof sags with smoke and the walls sweat with soot. Where everything is heavy. The hammer, the tongs, the silence. In the medieval world, the blacksmith is not simply a tradesman. He is the village's memory of Roman iron and Saxon fire. He knows how to melt ore into function, and how to breathe life into what was once stone. Tools, weapons, nails, horseshoes, locks, armor. He makes them all. But more than that, he maintains the quiet rhythm of a place most people never see in motion. The forge is always warm, the anvil is always waiting, and the day is always long. There is no moment in his schedule for idleness. Even now, while the baker shapes dough and the monk wipes sleep from his eyes, the blacksmith has already made a decision about which piece of steel will bend and which will break. He does not guess. He remembers. He feels. Listen. You can hear the early clink of iron through the frost-heavy morning. A child might stir. A dog might raise its head. But most won't wake yet. Not until the sun is properly over the rooftops. By then, the smith's apron will be black with ash, and the day will already be half earned. So let us follow him. Let us walk beside this man who rarely speaks, whose work cannot be rushed, and whose hands carry the weight of his village's needs. Let us watch as he fuels the fire, chooses the right iron, speaks with customers, argues over grain or coin, and lifts things no one else dares lift. This is not the story of war or royalty. This is not a tale of knights or kings. This is a single, ordinary day in the life of a medieval blacksmith. Let the fire warm your face. The day is just beginning. Before the birds stir, before the hens murmur in their coops, before the priest's candle flickers in the chapel window. The forge is already awake. It begins in the dark. Not the black of midnight, but the murky grey just before dawn. That peculiar hour when the world feels like it's holding its breath. Outside, the village is a still silhouette of thatched roofs and shuttered windows. The dirt paths between houses soft with dew and silent, but for the occasional drip of condensation from the eaves. But within the blacksmith's small timber-framed building, squat, low-roofed, and warm with yesterday's smoke, there is movement. The blacksmith has risen long before the others. There was no bell to wake him, no rooster, no knock. He rose because the day has taught him when it must begin. And like the tools in his workshop, his body has been shaped by repetition. His hands move before his eyes fully open. One foot touches the cool floor. He stretches once, briefly, and begins his day. There is no fire yet in the forge, only the ghost of it. Ashes from yesterday's heat lie buried under layers of half-burnt charcoal and powdered soot. The hearth is dark but not cold. The embers beneath have slept lightly, and with enough breath, they will wake again. The first task is to rekindle. He kneels by the fire pit, lifting a lid of stone and iron that holds the remnants of the previous day. Using an iron poker, he gently stirs the ash. Tiny flecks of orange respond. A warm pulse stirs beneath the surface. He adds kindling, twigs, bark, the remains of an old cart spoke, and then a few measured puffs from his lungs. The embers glow brighter, exhaling thin tendrils of smoke. He leans forward, steady, unrushed, and begins to work the bellows. Each pull of the lever sends a breath into the forge, and the fire responds with a low roar. The blacksmith does not flinch at the heat. He watches it with the practiced calm of someone who knows what comes next. Someone who's done this thousands of times. The forge is alive again. The day has begun. It's not yet time to shape metal. That will come later. For now, the blacksmith's work is preparatory, silent, patient, and essential. His workshop is still cool enough to feel the early chill of morning. The stone walls are cold. The wooden beams drip with nighttime moisture. But that will not last. He begins to prepare the tools, lifting the hammer from its place on the wall and feeling its weight in his palm. He tests the balance. It is familiar, worn smooth by years of contact. Nearby lie tongs of various shapes, curled hooks, and a row of chisels in descending size, all hanging from a crossbeam above the workbench. He runs his fingers along them like a musician laying out his instruments. He inspects the anvil, the true heart of his workspace. It sits on a block of wood as thick as a tree trunk, its surface flat, dented from years of blows, but still perfectly usable. One of its corners has chipped. Another bears the faint symbol of its maker, an older smith, now long dead, who had carved a sigil into the iron when the village was still young. The blacksmith wipes it clean, brushes off the dust with a stiff horsehair bundle, and sets his hammer beside it. Outside, the sky is lightening, but the sun is still beneath the trees. The village is still at rest, but here the day is gathering momentum. The warmth of the forge begins to push back the cold. The walls sweat, the air thickens, and the blacksmith, silent still, sets to his rituals. He sharpens. Each morning, without fail, he sharpens the edges of 3 chisels and 2 coal-cutting wedges. Even if he did not use them yesterday, even if he doesn't plan to use them today, the edges must be ready. One never knows when a broken plough blade or a snapped door hinge might arrive. And no one brings broken iron at a convenient hour. He turns the grindstone by hand, slowly. It squeals lightly, wet with oil, as the chisel's edge presses against the moving stone. Sparks whisper off the sides like fireflies. His hand does not tremble. It has learned the rhythm. 1 pass, 2, 3, turn, repeat. The first chisel is done, then the next. There is peace in this work. No conversation, no rush. Just the sharpening of tools in a building that smells of charcoal, iron, oil, and wood smoke. The smells of permanence. A sound breaks the silence, faint, distant, yet familiar. The cough of a donkey, the first stirrings of livestock, a church bell in the next village carried faintly on the wind. Morning is coming, but still no one knocks. No customer arrives this early. The blacksmith takes the opportunity to think. He opens a small leather ledger, hand-bound with rough parchment pages and soot-blackened corners. The writing inside is crude, blocky, functional. This is not a book for beauty. It is for keeping track of repairs, promised deliveries, and who still owes payment from last week. He runs a finger down the list. 2 horseshoes for Master Aldrich's mare, a kitchen knife for the baker's wife, a broken scythe handle that needs reforging. He nods. He remembers. His mind, like his hands, is practiced in order. There's one more task before the sun rises. The fire must be brought to full heat. He feeds it again, adding split logs soaked in resin and a fresh layer of charcoal from the covered bin by the door. As the flames rise, the color of the forge changes from orange to a fierce, clean yellow. The metal scraps in the corner glow faintly in the reflected light. He removes his outer tunic, revealing a thick linen shirt stained dark with years of sweat and soot. His arms are corded with muscle, not the kind born in fields, but in hours of lifting hammers, tongs, and bars of unforgiving iron. His skin is tough, burned, calloused, scarred, but strong. He fastens his leather apron around his waist. The strap fits into the same notch as always. He ties it tightly. The air in the workshop is warmer now, humming with heat and energy. It is almost time to begin shaping. But first, a sip of water, a piece of rye bread from a cloth bundle near the wall. Not breakfast exactly, but enough to begin. He leans on the work table for a moment, listening. The village is stirring now. A dog barks. A door creaks open. A child shouts. Soon the first knock will come. But for this moment, just one, the blacksmith stands in silence in the center of his shop. Around him, tools hang in order. The fire glows steady and strong. His hands are warm. The forge is ready. Let the day begin. The sun is finally climbing. A pale, golden light filters through the cracks in the blacksmith timber-framed walls, glinting against the curling smoke that lingers in the rafters. Birds can be heard now. Short, eager calls from the rooftops and the hedgerows. Someone outside is sweeping their threshold. Another is already calling for a chicken that's wandered too far. Inside the forge, the rhythm is slower. It is not yet the hour of frantic hammering or shouted requests. This is still a time of preparation, the quiet before the fire sings and the anvil replies. And so, the blacksmith tends to the most important companions of his trade, his tools. There are no machines here, no engines, no complex systems of gears or wires. The blacksmith's entire world rests on a simple foundation: a bench, an anvil, a hearth, a few dozen hand tools, and the body that wields them all. They are heavy, purposeful, simple, but never crude. They are made by hand, kept by habit, and remembered by feel. Each one has a name, a weight, a sound. To the outsider, a hammer is just a lump of iron with a wooden handle. But to the blacksmith, the hammer is as personal as breath. He has several, not because he is wasteful, but because each serves a purpose. There is the cross-peen hammer, the most familiar. Its head is rectangular, with one flat striking face and a narrow wedge on the opposite side. He uses this for shaping hot metal, drawing it out into long, flat bars, or tapering it into points. The crossbeam concentrates the force in a tight line, making it easier to spread the metal with control. Then there is the straight peen hammer, nearly identical, but turned 90 degrees. It's used for tasks that require the force to move along a different direction, guiding the metal to flow down instead of out. He also owns a ball peen, a heavier hammer with a rounded side. That one is useful for softening edges or creating rivets, a common need when repairing carts or assembling iron frames. Each hammer weighs differently. Some are under 2 pounds, meant for lighter tapping or fine shaping. Others push 4 or 5 pounds, reserved for the most stubborn iron. the thickest hinges, or the rudest pieces of old scrap that must be beaten back into purpose. And then, tucked near the back of the shop beneath a canvas cover, lies the sledgehammer. It is rarely used alone. It is a two-handed thing, almost too heavy for one man, meant to be swung in great arcs or wielded by an apprentice in tandem, while the master blacksmith holds the workpiece steady. The blacksmith lifts each hammer now, testing them, feeling the worn spots in the handles where his fingers have gripped again and again. He turns one over, inspecting a faint crack in the wood, and makes a note to replace the handle before the week is out. He doesn't need to look at their labels. He knows them by weight, by balance, by the sound they make when dropped back into their wooden rack. To a smith, hammers are not tools. They are habits made iron. Across the workshop, neatly hung on nails driven into the thick beam wall, are the tongs. They look alike at a glance. Two iron arms joined by a riveted hinge. But each pair is subtly different. The length, the curve of the jaws, the angle of the grip. There is the flat bit tong, used for holding wide flat pieces, knife blades for example, or the straps that reinforce a wooden door. There are box-jawed tongs with square ends that grip square stock, bars that haven't yet been rounded or filed. There are wolf-jaw tongs, more versatile than most. Their jagged jaws can bite down on flat, square, or even irregular pieces. Handy when the job is unpredictable, or when a customer shows up with some half-rusted object that needs reshaping. Each pair of tongs has been blackened by flame and shaped by use. Some are new, shiny along the rivets. Others are old, their jaws slightly askew, polished smooth by years of gripping red-hot iron. No gloves are used. The blacksmith trusts his tools, and his hands are no stranger to heat. He grips the tongs bare-handed, knowing exactly how much pressure to apply without slipping, and how to shift his grip without fumbling. If he fumbles, he risks not just the workpiece, but his body. These tools do not forgive mistakes, but they reward familiarity. Then, at the center of the workspace, sits the anvil. It is not elegant. It is not clean. It is pitted and dented, scratched and blackened, the paint long worn away, but it is solid, heavy, unyielding. A good anvil is not simply a block of metal. It is a shape, carefully refined over generations, to give the blacksmith options. This one has a flat face, where most of the work is done. It has a horn, curved and tapering, where rings are shaped and curves are drawn. It has a hardy hole, square and deep, where other tools can be inserted. Cutting chisels, bending jigs, top tools. The surface is marred by thousands of strikes, but those dents are not flaws. They are memory. Every blow that landed wrong, every apprentice swing that came too hard, every heavy nail straightened in a rush. The blacksmith runs a hand over the horn. It is warm now from the growing heat in the room. He does not need to oil it. It is always in use. A poor smith blames his anvil. A good one listens to it. The tone of the ring, the feel of the rebound. It tells you if your strike was solid or soft. The anvil becomes a partner, not just a surface. It is the oldest tool in the shop, and it will likely outlast the smith himself. To one side of the room is the bench, a long, sturdy table of thick oak, scarred with cut marks, stained with oil, and dusted always with metal filings. Here lie the files, a whole row of them in different shapes and sizes. Flat, half-round, triangular. Some are coarse, for fast removal. Others are fine, for the final touches on a knife edge or a horseshoe clasp. Files are delicate compared to the forge tools. They must be kept dry, oiled, and stored away from moisture. The blacksmith wraps his finer ones in cloth at night and checks them each morning for rust. Nearby sits a vise, a strong iron clamp mounted to the bench. When the smith must work both hands, say, to chisel a groove or twist a cooling rod, the vise holds the piece in place like a third hand. Above the bench, hanging from a beam, are smaller tools, a square for measuring right angles, a scribe for marking cut lines, a small mallet for lighter adjustments, and a rarely used but still treasured punch set for stamping decorative marks or owner's initials into cooled metal. There's also a short-bladed scraper, curved slightly, with a horn handle. It's used not on metal, but on wood. Occasionally, a smith must make or modify his own handles for tools, or repair a customer's shovel or rake that's more wood than steel. Even in a place built around fire and iron, wood has its role. Last comes the forge itself, the hearth and bellows, the source of all transformation. The hearth is a simple stone basin, coated black from years of flame, with a layered base of ash, sand, and fire brick. It is not neat, but it is effective. The bellows, mounted beside it, are large, nearly as tall as a man when fully extended. Made of wood, leather, and iron brackets, they are operated with a long horizontal handle that the blacksmith pushes and pulls, each stroke delivering a gust of air beneath the coals. The sound of the bellows is like slow breathing, a deep exhale that feeds the fire. The smith knows how many strokes it takes to reach forging heat. He knows the color of the coal when it's ready, a white-hot center fading to orange and red around the edges. He knows when it's too hot, when it's smoky, when it needs fresh charcoal. He also knows when to stop. A fire that's too hot can ruin the metal. It can burn carbon from steel or crack thin iron. So the blacksmith balances heat, timing, rhythm. In this way, the forge becomes not just a tool, but a living thing. It demands attention, and in return, it gives life to all the other tools. Together, these tools form more than a workplace. They form a world. The blacksmith does not own wealth and coin. He does not write poems or hold land, but he holds knowledge, passed from calloused hand to calloused hand, about how to take raw earth, fire, and patience and turn them into usefulness. His tools are not perfect. Some are chipped, others are patched with wire or bound with twine. But they work, and they do not forget. He touches each one in turn as the morning light grows stronger. He adjusts their positions, checks the iron straps on the bellows, oils the vise, brushes ash from the anvil face. None of this is glamorous. None of it is done for show. But it is what makes the next hours possible. Soon, a boy will arrive with a bent plough hook. A farmer will come needing nails. A priest may need a new bracket for a lantern. The Lord Steward might send for a repaired wheel rim, or worse, a saw to be reforged. When they come, the blacksmith will not fumble. He will be ready, because his tools are ready. And so the forge hums gently, and the blacksmith stands amidst them all, silent, waiting. The day is still young. The village has woken. There's a change in the air now. The distant clatter of wooden wheels, the soft barking of dogs, the creak of door hinges, and the low murmur of voices rising and falling along the narrow dirt lanes. Smoke is starting to drift from chimneys. Chickens stir from their coops. Somewhere a child laughs, sharp and brief, before being hushed by a tired mother. The rhythm of another day begins to take hold. Inside the forge, the blacksmith stands beside the anvil. wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his wrist. The fire has already been fed twice since the sun rose. The heat pulses in slow waves from the hearth, softening the shadows on the walls and curling the corners of old papers nailed to the beams. The shop is alive now, not only with warmth, but with purpose. Then comes the first knock. It's not urgent. No one ever knocks with urgency this early. The blacksmith steps to the open threshold, wiping his hands on a cloth tucked into his apron. Outside stands a young boy, thin, wide-eyed, not yet old enough for his own tools. He carries a small wooden cart behind him with 2 iron hoops slung across it. Broken barrel rims by the look of them, bent awkwardly and rusted around the joints. He doesn't need to explain. The blacksmith has seen this sort of thing 100 times. A cooper's work made hasty, iron stretched too thin. He nods once and gestures the boy inside. The boy watches with quiet curiosity as the blacksmith sets the rims on the workbench. He turns them in his hands, checking for cracks, then places one on the anvil. There's no rush, not for this. He knows the family. He's seen the boy's father sweating over barrels near the well, and knows they'll pay in dry wood or smoked fish by week's end. He adjusts the tongs, grips the rim, and slips it gently into the coals. Soon enough, the forge will bring in more than boys with broken rims. The blacksmith shop is a crossroads of the village. Everyone comes here eventually, from the humblest peasant to the manor's reeve. No one can avoid him for long. Iron doesn't wait, and when iron fails, they come to him. By mid-morning, the pace has shifted again. The small requests begin to pile up. A farmer appears with a handful of bent nails and a scythe that won't hold its edge. He lays them down gently on a scrap of cloth, wiping his brow with a hand that smells faintly of onions and damp straw. He doesn't speak much, just a polite nod and a quiet request. The blacksmith accepts it without question. Nails can be reforged. The scythe will take more time. He makes a note on his ledger and tells the man to return in 2 days' time. Next comes the baker's wife, stern, fast-talking, flour-dusted. She carries a worn iron bread peel with a crack across the middle and a flat ladle missing its edge. She has no patience for delay, and she speaks as if the whole village might starve if her tools aren't returned by dawn. The blacksmith listens quietly, nodding where appropriate. He places the ladle on the bench and marks the fracture with chalk. She's still speaking as she leaves. Then comes the manor steward. His arrival is always different. There is no knock, only the sound of hooves and boots, a cart creaking under the weight of larger tools and rougher needs. The steward himself rarely steps inside. He stands at the edge of the forge, arms crossed, surveying the room, like a man who does not sweat. Behind him, 2 labourers begin unloading items. A rusted gate hinge, a broken plough head, and, most notably, a sword with a dented fuller and chips along its edge. The blacksmith approaches, wiping his hands on a cloth that is already black with soot. He says nothing. The steward speaks with clipped formality. The plough is needed by week's end. The gate must be remounted before the next delivery. The sword, well, the sword must be ready before the next hunt. He says this as if it's obvious, as if the nobility's blade deserves as much attention as the plough that feeds the people. The blacksmith examines the sword closely. It's not a well-made weapon, likely decorative or passed down more for show than function. But still, he nods. He'll fix it. He always does. This is how the morning passes. a slow procession of villagers and needs, each bearing something slightly broken, slightly bent, or just worn thin by time. Some offer coin, others offer barter. A few offer nothing at all, trusting that debts will be remembered and repaid when next they can afford it. The blacksmith accepts it all, recording notes in his cracked ledger, marking pages with charcoal and flattened nails. He knows who pays promptly and who doesn't, who brings clean tools and who brings rust, who tries to haggle and who leaves an extra egg or sprig of herbs on the bench out of gratitude. It is not all about gold. A bag of oats in winter is worth more than silver in spring. There is no middleman here, no clerk or apprentice standing in between. The blacksmith hears every request, examines every object, and assigns the value himself. He is not only a smith, he is a judge of material and character both. Around midday, the pace slows briefly. The heat of the forge has soaked into the walls, and the room hums with warmth. The blacksmith eats sparingly. A piece of salted pork wrapped in cloth, a round of rye bread, a handful of beans still in their pod. He eats standing, near the bench, sipping from a jug of well water gone warm from the hearth's breath. There is no feast. There is no time for one. Outside, the village is quieter now. Most are busy in their own trades, milking, sowing, threshing. The bell in the chapel rings once, marking the hour, but no one lingers to pray. Even the dogs have curled into shady corners. The blacksmith returns to the anvil and resumes his work. He begins with the scythe. It's old, the kind passed from father to son without ceremony. The blade is dull, and the tang is warped. He clamps it in the vise and files it carefully, feeling for resistance, for softness in the steel. It's not good metal, but it's salvageable. Next, the sword. He does not care for weapons. He has made them and repaired them, but they are vanity more than necessity. Still, he treats it with respect. He lays it on the horn of the anvil and begins to work on the edge. Gentle taps at first, then firmer strikes to mend the dent. It will never be balanced, never worthy of battle, but it will shine again, and it will be sharp enough to impress a noble who doesn't know better. By late afternoon, the blacksmith has finished 4 nails, 1 hinge, the ladle, and the rim from the boy's barrel cart. He has 2 more repairs waiting on the bench, and 1 request, a new axe head, that he hasn't started yet. There is no end to the work, only the pacing of it. As the sun lowers in the sky, new customers arrive, tired from their own labours, bringing broken tools as part of their evening errands. A stable hand drops off 2 horseshoes. A shepherd arrives with a bent knife. An old woman, nearly bent double, asks if he can mend the iron hoop that frames her cooking pot. She brought it wrapped in linen, as if it were a sacred object. The blacksmith nods. He treats each item with the same calm attention. The requests come not with urgency, but with trust. There is no other smith nearby, no second option. When something breaks, they come to him, and he, in turn, learns more about the village than the reeve or the priest. He knows which children are growing, whose fences need mending, who is preparing for a journey, who has fallen ill. All told to him not in words, but in the metal they bring. He never repeats what he hears. He never asks more than what is offered. He simply listens, repairs, and returns. As evening nears, the manor steward returns. This time, he brings a different tone, quieter, almost hesitant. A message from the Lord, a request for new spearheads. 6, to be finished before the month's end. There is no explanation, but the blacksmith understands. He nods once. He will need better iron and more charcoal. The steward says they will be sent. He writes it down in the ledger, then turns back to the bench. The fire is low again. He feeds it slowly. The day has been long, and yet it is not over. Tools have been reshaped. Blades have been repaired. Orders have been taken. But still, the anvil waits, and the bellows stretch once more. The blacksmith wipes soot from his fingers and tightens the strap of his apron. There is always one more task, one more knock, one more thing to fix, and he is always ready. Iron does not come to the blacksmith in perfection. It arrives heavy, rough, and crude, pulled from the ground, scorched by flame, and pounded into shape by others long before it ever reaches his hands. It is not the blacksmith who minds it. It is not even always he who smelts it. But once it enters his workshop, it becomes his burden and his responsibility. No one in the village sees iron as beautiful. They do not gaze at a bar of pig iron and imagine what it could be. But the blacksmith does. He knows its weight, its scent, and its sound. He knows its moods, how it resists at first, then softens with heat, then flares back with brittleness if pushed too far. This knowledge is not written down. It is not something he could explain in words. It lives in the creases of his palms, in the flick of his wrist as he turns a glowing rod, in the angle of the hammer at the first strike. It lives in time, in experience, in the quiet memory of how iron behaves when no one else is watching. He keeps his stock in a corner near the forge, a pile of bar iron, flat stock, square rods, and worn scraps. Most are black with rust. Some are fresh from a trader's cart, still sharp along the edges and chalk marked with weights. Others are leftovers, bent and battered, but still useful. He sees no waste here, only potential. He sorts the bars slowly, one at a time. The lighter ones are for nails, hinges, simple tools. The thicker stock he sets aside for heavy work. Wheel rims, gate brackets, or perhaps the spearheads requested by the manor. He lifts a twisted piece from the bottom of the pile, once part of a broken fence, and turns it in his hands. The grain is good, no cracks, still usable. This is what the blacksmith does. He looks at iron and sees not what it is, but what it could be. But iron is nothing without fire. Fire is the blacksmith's partner, dangerous, temperamental, but necessary. The forge is no mere fireplace. It is a machine of heat and air, crafted for the purpose of transforming solid earth into something useful. The forge is built low, circular, lined with stone and ash-hardened clay. In its center lies a hollow where the coals are placed, and beneath that, the tuyere, a narrow pipe through which air is forced from the bellows into the heart of the fire. Without air, the fire dies. With too much, it flares wild and wasteful. So the blacksmith controls the breath of the forge like a careful musician, always measuring, always adjusting. The fire must be hot, but not too hot. Yellow is good, white is dangerous, orange is patient, red is waiting. The fuel is charcoal, not coal, not wood, but wood transformed. The blacksmith does not make it himself, but he knows those who do. Charcoal is created in the woods beyond the village, in great smothered pits that smoke for days. The wood is stacked and burned without oxygen, reduced not to ash, but to carbon-rich chunks that burn hotter and cleaner than any raw log ever could. He keeps sacks of it near the forge, protected from rain and damp. It is light, brittle, and dirty. Touching it blackens the fingers. But in the fire, it becomes something else. A steady source of heat that can bring iron to a glowing yellow, soft as wax and ready to be shaped. This is the alchemy of the blacksmith. He takes from the earth and returns something made. He begins to feed the fire again now, lifting handfuls of charcoal into the basin, layering it over the glowing coals from the morning's work. The fire stirs, exhales, and flares. He adjusts the bellows, watching the colour shift. The forge responds like a living thing, breathing in rhythm with his movements. There is comfort in this ritual. He has performed it for years, and still it never feels casual. Each fire is different. Each piece of iron needs its own time. If he rushes, the metal will crack. If he hesitates, it will cool too soon. So he watches the fire like a shepherd watches the sky, not to control it, but to understand it. He selects a piece of bar iron and sets it near the edge of the coals, letting it warm gradually. Not directly into the center, not yet. First, it must be eased into the heat, allowed to wake without stress. He waits until the bar begins to glow along its edge, a soft bloom of red like the color beneath an eyelid at sunrise. Then moves it deeper. He pumps the bellows once, twice. The flame responds with a low roar. The iron brightens. Now it is ready. The sound of metal entering the forge is not a hiss, but a quiet shift, a dry clink against the stone, a faint pulse of heat rising toward the rafters. The blacksmith does not speak. He watches. A good smith does not move until the iron tells him it is time. When it is ready, he lifts it with tongs, carefully, precisely, and sets it on the anvil. The glow is even, warm yellow with a touch of orange at the edges. The metal is soft, but not too soft. He raises the hammer and begins to strike. Not hard at first, just shaping, guiding. The blows fall in rhythm, slow, deliberate, consistent. The sound fills the room, iron on iron, deep and ringing, echoing off the stone walls. Outside, birds pause in their song. A dog lifts its head. Somewhere in the distance, a child counts the strikes. The bar flattens beneath the hammer. It widens. It stretches. The edges curl slightly, as expected. He rotates it, strikes again. The shape changes, slowly but surely. He is not making a tool, not yet. He is learning what this piece of iron wants to be. Not all iron behaves the same. Some bars are brittle, laced with impurities. Others are strong, but stubborn. He tests this one, bends it slightly, watches how it reacts. It bends smoothly. A good sign. He returns it to the forge. This is how the afternoon passes. Iron in, iron out, hammer, fire, tongs, water. Each bar is different. Each piece of charcoal burns a little faster than the last. The forge breathes. The anvil sings. The blacksmith listens. From time to time, he pauses to file a burr from a blade, or to measure a length against a wooden pattern. But always, he returns to the rhythm of fire and metal. This is the center of his work. Not the requests, not the repairs, not the ledger or the coin. This, the moment when raw material becomes form, is what defines him. He is not a thinker, not a planner. He does not speak of philosophy or law, but he understands transformation better than most men ever will. He knows how heat can change what seems unchangeable, how something dull and grey can become bright, useful and strong. It is not magic, but it feels close. Outside, the sun is beginning to lower. Long shadows stretch across the path beyond the door. A neighbour passes by with a cart of vegetables, offering a quick nod of acknowledgement. The village knows the rhythm of the forge. They do not interrupt unless they must. The blacksmith removes a now finished bar from the anvil and quenches it in a barrel of water near the bench. Steam rises in a sharp hiss, curling around his wrist as the iron cools. The sound is brief, but satisfying. The punctuation at the end of a long sentence. He lays the finished piece on the table and stretches his shoulders. His shirt is soaked through. His hands are black with soot and fine iron dust, but his eyes are calm, focused. He wipes the sweat from his brow and reaches for the next bar. The fire has dimmed slightly. He adds more charcoal, adjusts the bellows, and watches as the coals catch and begin to glow again. There are more pieces to shape, more iron to understand. He does not look at the clock. There is no clock, only the movement of the sun and the hunger in his belly. But for now, the forge is hot. The metal is warm. The work is not yet done. The forge is glowing bright now, steady, pulsing, and full. The air within the shop is thick with heat and smoke, a living breath that clings to the walls and warms the floorboards underfoot. It is not a clean place, not a quiet one, but it is a place of transformation. This is the blacksmith's moment. The fire has been prepared. The tools are laid out. The iron is sorted. There's no more waiting, no more measuring. Now he works, fluid, practiced, and alone. The room has its rhythm, though no one but the blacksmith hears it. It begins with the hiss of the tongs lifting a bar from the coal bed. Orange hot, humming with potential. The glow spreads evenly across the shaft of iron, its edges soft and pulsing with light. The blacksmith pivots in a single motion, sets it on the anvil, and adjusts his grip without looking. The hammer is already in his hand. The first strike is light, a tap to confirm the metal's readiness. The sound it makes tells him all he needs, a rich, deep note, not brittle, not soft, just right. Then the real work begins. He raises the hammer and brings it down. One solid strike, then another and another, not hurried, but unbroken. Each blow draws the metal outward, stretches its shape, reshapes its center. The bar lengthens. Its profile changes. He flips it in the tongs, strikes again. The air fills with the sharp ring of metal on metal, and sparks leap from the anvil's face like fireflies on a summer night. His muscles move without conscious thought. The strength is not in brute force, but in precision. In the angle of the wrist, the rotation of the shoulder, the timing of the strike. He knows when to pause, when to reheat, when to shift the workpiece half an inch to the left. No apprentice stands beside him, no one to hand him tools or shout over the din. This is a solitary dance, old, precise, and deeply human. The blacksmith turns the metal again and taps the edge flat, forming the base of a bracket he began earlier. The iron cools quickly outside the fire, and he returns it to the coals before it hardens too much. There is no time to waste. Every second counts once the glowing bar leaves the hearth. He works this way for hours, not all in silence. The forge makes its own music, but without distraction. He finishes one piece, quenches it in the water barrel, and sets it aside. Then the next, a horseshoe, a chisel, a door hinge. Nothing beautiful, nothing grand, but each piece is needed, each one built to endure. The workshop itself seems to respond to the motion. Shadows shift with each flare of the fire. Dust rises in gentle spirals. The blacksmith's apron stiffens with sweat and ash. He moves from hearth to anvil to bench and back again. The path so well worn that the floor beneath his boots is polished smooth by time. Now and then, he stops to regrind an edge, to file a joint. to check a measurement against a wooden form hanging from the wall. But mostly, he trusts his hands. They remember better than his eyes. There is a deep comfort in this phase of the day. The village outside continues on. Carts creak, voices rise and fall. A dog barks once and then again, but none of it reaches him. Inside the forge, there is only heat, iron, and movement. The blacksmith is at work. He lifts another bar of square stock from the pile. This one will become a latch, the kind fixed to a barn door, built to last through rain, frost, and careless use. He heats it, then begins the shaping. First the flattened face, then the loop, then the hook. He bends the piece against the horn of the anvil, using a bending fork and light taps of the hammer to round the iron without cracking it. He doesn't rush. Every curve must be even, every angle true. Even though the customer won't notice the details, he does, and that is enough. He finishes the loop, reheats, and draws the shaft into a taper. It must fit cleanly into the socket already nailed to the door. He doesn't have the door here, of course. He's only seen it once, years ago in passing, but he remembers. His hand adjusts the curve slightly to match what memory offers. He smiles faintly, not because it is perfect, but because it is right. Somewhere near the end of the bench sits a small pile of finished work. A reworked horseshoe, 2 new nails, a riveted bracket, a hinge pin, a chisel head. Each one still warm from the fire. Each one carefully shaped, checked, and set aside. They will go out tomorrow. Some will be traded for grain or cheese. Others will disappear into the manor's stores, hidden behind wooden gates or affixed to wagons. None will bear his name, but all will last. That is the measure of the work, not fame, but permanence. The blacksmith pauses to stretch his back, rotating his shoulders and shaking the ache from his hands. He dips a cloth into the water bucket and wipes the sweat from his face. The forge is quieter now, burning low but steady, a belly full of coals breathing slowly in the dim afternoon light. The heat still radiates from the hearth. It seeps into the walls, curls around his boots, and lingers in his bones. He's grown used to it. Some days it feels like part of him, as if the forge has rewired his sense of comfort. He prefers it warm now. Silence and cold are strangers. He turns toward the anvil again. One final piece. A customer had asked earlier for a new knife. Not a fine kitchen blade, just a simple one for cutting rope and scraping hide. The sort of tool every farmer owns, loses, and replaces without much thought. But still, it deserves care. He selects a short, narrow bar of steel and places it into the fire, this time near the hottest point. Knife work is different. It demands more precision, tighter focus, and careful judgment of temperature. Too cold, and the blade won't shape. Too hot, and it could crumble at the edge. When the bar glows pale orange, he lifts it, places it on the anvil, and begins to draw out the tip. He moves slowly at first, shaping the point, narrowing the blade, keeping the edges even. He rotates the piece every few strikes to ensure symmetry. The metal fights him, as it always does, but he persists. When the blade's rough form is complete, he reheats and turns to the spine, thinning it just slightly. He won't waste time making it beautiful, but it must feel right in the hand. Then comes the tang, the narrow part that will be inserted into a wooden handle. He draws it out carefully, measuring its length against a notch on the side of the bench. Once it is finished, he places the blade in the coals again, not for shaping, but for hardening. The hardening process is delicate. The metal must be brought to the perfect heat, a uniform orange glow, and then plunged quickly into water to lock its strength. If done incorrectly, the blade will become brittle. If done well, it will hold an edge for years. He watches the blade closely as it heats. He turns it once, twice. Then without hesitation, he lifts it with tongs and slides it into the water barrel. The quench is sharp and loud, a flash of steam, a hiss, and a rippling wave that darkens the water's surface. He lifts the blade, checks it, then sets it aside to cool. The work is done. For now. The blacksmith steps back from the bench and breathes deeply. The forge is still warm, but its roar has softened. The pile of raw iron is smaller than this morning. The pile of finished work is larger. A quiet satisfaction fills the space where once there was silence. He wipes his hands once more and removes his apron, setting it over a hook by the door. He picks up the small knife blade and places it gently on the shelf beside the others, where it will wait for its owner. Outside, the shadows have shifted again. The sun leans low toward the trees, and the air carries a different kind of quiet. Not the stillness of morning, but the pause before evening settles in. The blacksmith stretches once more, rolls his neck, and walks slowly to the door. He has shaped iron today. He's made something from almost nothing, and he has done it by hand, one blow at a time. The forge is never quiet for long. Even as the blacksmith wipes the sweat from his hands and steps away from the anvil, even as the fire settles into its late afternoon rhythm, and the glow from the coals softens to a dull orange, there is always one more task, one more item brought through the door, one more reminder that his work is never limited to one kind of labor. In a village like this, the blacksmith is not just a tradesman. He is a necessity. A carpenter may fashion beams, and a mason may set stone, but neither can build without nails. A farmer may plough his fields, but not without a blade. A horse may carry a knight, but not without shoes. Iron is everywhere, and because iron is everywhere, the blacksmith is everywhere too. His work scattered across the barns and gates and walls and wagons of the entire village. His touch quietly embedded in the places people forget to look. The first task at hand is a pair of worn horseshoes, laid carefully at his door early this morning by a stable hand too shy to speak. The blacksmith finds them near the threshold and turns them in his palm. They're ordinary, curved, pitted, bent slightly out of shape from months of wear on rocky roads. A few of the nail holes have widened. The surface is slick with dust and grease. He does not need the horsehair to begin. A skilled blacksmith can read a shoe like a letter. The wear pattern, the shape of the curve, the depth of the indentations, all speak to the gait and weight of the animal. From this, he can tell what size the new shoes must be, where they should be thicker, where the arch needs reinforcement. He returns to the forge, selects a bar of square stock, and begins to heat it. When the iron glows the proper shade of yellow, he draws it out, bends it slowly across the horn of the anvil, tapping with measured strokes to create the arc. He forms the curve, punches the nail holes, flattens the outer edge, and hardens it with a water quench. The process is repeated 4 times, once for each hoof. The result is a set of shoes that will last through winter. Simple, functional, and tailored to a horse he has never seen. He sets the shoes aside and turns to the pile of requests that have accumulated near his bench. There's a small bundle of iron nails, half finished from yesterday, still awaiting trimming and filing. Nails may seem mundane, but they are the foundation of every barn and barrel, chest and cart. They hold the world together. He takes up his hammer once more and begins to finish the batch. Nails begin as thin square rods, heated, then tapered to a point with careful strikes. A notch is made at the other end, and the head is flattened with a quick twist and a precise blow. Each nail is small, but its forging demands care. Too thin, and it will bend. Too thick, and it will split the wood it's driven into. A good blacksmith knows the balance. He shapes a dozen before the fire needs feeding again. As he works, his thoughts drift, not idly, but in the quiet pattern that comes with repetition. He thinks of the farmer who will use these nails to mend a gate, of the cooper who needs them for his casks, of the boy who once asked, wide-eyed, how many nails it takes to build a house. He had answered truthfully, too many to count. Not every request is so simple. Sometimes the blacksmith is asked to forge tools that stretch the limits of his materials. A new axe head for the woodsman whose blade cracked during felling. A draw knife for a carpenter reshaping beams in a crumbling loft. A grain scoop made half of iron, half of ash wood, bound together with rivets that must never slip. And sometimes, especially in times of tension, the requests become heavier. The manor steward appears again before dusk, flanked by 2 men-at-arms. This time, the tone is not polite. It is brisk, businesslike. One of the men unloads a bundle of damaged armor onto the work table. A dented breastplate, a split vambrace, and a helm with a cracked visor. These are not the tools of daily life. These are tools of war. The blacksmith says nothing. He lifts the breastplate and turns it in his hands. The dent is deep, the shape of a mace or a heavy axe. It will need to be heated, flattened, reforged along the edge. The helmet is worse. The iron along the visor is torn, as if it caught the edge of a blade. It will need patching and reinforcement. This is not the work he loves, but it is work he knows. He agrees to begin immediately. Armor is different from plows and nails. It must be strong, but flexible. It must protect, but not weigh the wearer into the ground. Each piece must be shaped not just to the human form, but to movement. The bending of elbows, the twist of the shoulder, the crouch of the knee. And unlike nails or hinges, armor speaks of danger. He begins with the breastplate. The piece is wide and curved, meant to rest over the torso of a soldier who probably does not know the name of the man who made it. He places it over a shallow wooden stump, shaped for this very purpose, and begins to work out the dent. Each blow is measured, firm, but never reckless. Too much force will buckle the metal, too little, and the deformity will remain. He reheats the plate once, twice. The color changes each time. Dark at first, then red, then orange, then dull again as it cools. He works quickly between heatings, flattening the surface with a round hammer, smoothing the inside with a curved die. After 2 full cycles, the dent is gone. He files the edges, polishes the face with a strip of rough cloth and powdered charcoal, and sets it aside. Then comes the helm. This will take longer. He studies the crack, a split along the seam of the visor, deep enough to weaken the face. He'll need to cut it open fully, weld a new piece into the gap, then reinforce the weld with rivets along the inside. The forge is still hot. The tools are ready. He gets to work. Outside, the light has dimmed further. The village is preparing for evening. A woman calls her children in from the lane. The last of the smoke from the day's cook fires rises gently above the rooftops. In the distance, the chapel bell rings its low, slow tone. Not a call to prayer, but a reminder of the hour. Inside, the blacksmith is still working. He has finished the helm, patched and polished. The pieces of armor lie stacked on the bench, faintly steaming, smelling of oil and hot metal. The manor's men will return for them tomorrow. They will not thank him, but they will know the work is sound, and that is enough. The final request of the day is a tool, simple, old, and beloved. An elderly man brings it to him wrapped in linen, a long-handled awl used for piercing leather. The point has dulled. The tang has loosened from the handle. The man says little, but the way he unrolls the cloth, the way he hands it over, says everything. It is not just a tool, it is a memory. The blacksmith nods and accepts it gently. He will sharpen the awl with care. He will refit the tang. He will replace the pin with a tighter rivet. And when he gives it back tomorrow, it will be stronger than when it was first made. Because that is what he does. He shapes iron not just into tools, but into continuity. The quiet, enduring pieces of daily life that do not call attention to themselves, but make all else possible. Shoes, nails, armor, awls, axes, hinges, each one different, each one made by the same hand. This is the blacksmith's many roles, silent, dependable, wide-ranging. He does not specialize. He does not choose his work. He receives it, accepts it, and makes it right. As evening falls, he stands once more at the anvil, surrounded by the things he has shaped. His forge breathes quietly now, the last of the charcoal collapsing inward. The bellows are still, the hammer rests, and tomorrow it begins again. The forge is not a quiet place. From the outside, it may seem simple enough. A wooden building, squat and dark, smoke trailing lazily from a crooked chimney, the faint glow of flame flickering behind warped shutters. But to step inside is to enter a world that moves, breathes, pulses. It begins with a noise. There is no stillness here. Every moment of the blacksmith's day is filled with sound, layered, overlapping, relentless. The hammer, of course, is the most commanding voice. It sings each time it strikes, a clean and heavy note that echoes off the stone walls and travels down the road. But there are subtler sounds too. The hush of bellows stretching and collapsing, the rasp of metal against the grinding stone, the splash and hiss of water quenching hot iron. Even silence has texture. In the brief pauses between tasks, the forge creaks softly. The fire hums like a resting beast. The wind pushes smoke through unseen gaps in the roof. The blacksmith does not mind the noise. He listens to it the way others listen to birds or bells, for rhythm, for change, for warning. He knows the difference between a clean strike and one that lands just a little off. He can tell when the fire has dipped too cool by the way the bellows respond. He notices the faint, hollow clink that means a piece has cooled too quickly or cracked beneath the surface. His ears are always working. And yet, amidst this noise, there is calm. To the blacksmith, it is not chaos. It is music, and he is the one keeping the time. Then there is the heat. It surrounds him from the moment the forge is lit. At first, it is welcome. A warmth that drives off the damp of dawn and the chill that clings to stone and floorboards. But as the day progresses, the heat deepens. It saturates the air. It climbs the walls. It fills the space between his skin and his shirt, soaks into his apron, and beads across his brow. There is no escape from it. The blacksmith does not step outside for long. The light out there is too bright. The breeze, when it comes, feels thin and insincere. He's grown used to the weight of the forge's warmth, the thick, dry air that makes his chest feel heavy and his boots sweat from within. It is not like the sun's heat. It is closer, more intimate. The fire is no longer something outside of him. It wraps around his body, clings to his clothing, marks him. His skin is always flushed. His palms are calloused not only from pressure, but from heat. He is, in many ways, forged by the forge. And still, he works. With the heat comes the smoke. It is constant, not choking, but always present. A ribbon of grey or brown, curling lazily from the hearth, rising in sheets through the gaps in the ceiling, clinging to the rafters like mist. It smells of charcoal and oil, of iron and sweat, of ash and something older, something harder to name. It leaves its mark on everything. The walls, once bright wood, are blackened. The anvil gleams only where it is struck. Even the nails in the beams have a dull sheen of soot. His tools wear the scent as if it were part of their making. His clothes absorb it. His beard tastes of it. He does not resent the smoke. It is the signature of his trade, a visible proof of labor, of heat, of transformation. But it does tire him. There are days when his eyes sting, days when the light in the forge seems filtered through smoke even before it rises. He wipes his brow, squints toward the hearth, and simply works through it. There is no stopping the fire once it has begun. Only the night can do that. Together, the noise, the heat, and the smoke form a kind of symphony, a daily composition that plays from before dawn until after dusk. It is not gentle, but it is familiar. It is not soothing, but it is grounding. The hammer marks the rhythm. The fire hums the melody. The smoke drapes it all in shadow, and the blacksmith moves through it like a conductor, not waving arms or flailing gestures, but with quiet precision. Each action a note, each tool an instrument, each completed piece a resolved chord. Even his fatigue is rhythmic. It comes and goes in predictable waves. A soreness in the shoulders, a stiffness in the neck, a weight in the legs that deepens with each hour spent at the anvil. But he knows this song. He has danced this dance before. He does not pause, not unless he must. Late in the afternoon, a storm passes close to the village. The sky darkens to a strange bluish grey, and wind rushes down the lanes like a sudden messenger. The bell in the chapel tower rattles faintly. Shutters bang open and are hurriedly drawn closed again. A chicken runs loose through the path. Inside the forge, the blacksmith does not flinch. The roar of wind outside is muffled by the walls. The occasional rattle of the shutters sounds faint against the louder music of hammer and flame. The forge is its own world. The weather matters only in how it affects the iron. Damp air cools the steel faster. Strong winds pull smoke from the chimney with a little more haste. But the fire burns on. The blacksmith does pause for a moment to tighten the latch on the door, more to keep the wind from lifting it than from any real worry. Then he returns to the hearth, adjusts the bellows, and lifts the next piece of stock from the charcoal. A latch for a barn, a bolt for a gate, more music to play. In this space, time behaves differently. It does not tick in regular intervals, but flows with the rhythm of the work. Hours pass unnoticed, measured not by clocks, but by completed tasks. A morning becomes an afternoon becomes evening. The light in the forge changes from amber to gold to dim grey. but the blacksmith feels it only in the weight of his limbs, the dryness of his mouth, the way his fingers begin to slow. Sometimes he works until there is nothing left to shape. Other times he stops not because the work is done, but because the fire tells him so. The coals collapse inward, the bellows fall still, the forge begins to sleep, and then so does he. But before that happens, before the tools are wiped clean, before the apron is unfastened, before the smoke thins and the final ember dims, the blacksmith stands in the middle of the noise, the heat, the smoke, and he listens. He listens not with his ears, but with something older, something deeper. He hears the echo of every strike, the hiss of every quench, the whispered breath of the flame as it licks the air. He feels the warmth along his arms, the ache in his shoulders, the soot that clings to the creases in his hands. He sees the haze that floats above the anvil like a ghost, like memory. And in that moment, everything feels known. He does not question it. He does not analyze it. He simply lets it be. The forge is noisy. It is hot. It is dirty. It is exhausting. And it is his. The fire quiets before the man does. In the forge, the blacksmith leans one hand on the anvil. His sleeve is rolled halfway up, sweat clinging in darkened patches. His back curls slightly, not from pain, but from the slow gravity of the day settling into his joints. The hammer rests beside him, still warm, still smudged with ash. For hours the day was a storm of heat and labor. Now it narrows to the steady pulse of tired limbs and quiet tools. There is still light in the sky, but it's the pale light of late evening, thin, stretched and fading. He does not yet sit. There are habits to maintain. The first is the clearing of space. Each tool must return to its place. The hammers to their hooks, the tongs to their stand, the files and punches and chisels wiped and lined in rows. A good blacksmith never sleeps with a disordered bench, not because anyone else will see it, but because it would feel wrong to start tomorrow with yesterday's mess underfoot. He places each tool with care. Some have been with him for decades. Others he's reforged himself. Their handles replaced, their heads reshaped. They are more than instruments. They are extensions of his thought, of his routine, of his muscle memory. Only once the last tong is hung does he step outside. The cool air touches his face like a balm. After the forge, the outside world feels almost unreal, too quiet, too spacious. The village lane runs silent now, the dirt path shaded in soft blue-grey. Chickens roost. Windows flicker with firelight. Distant voices murmur behind timber doors. He wipes his hands on his apron, then on the coarse cloth beside the doorway. The soot doesn't vanish, but it dulls. His skin is stained in places the rag cannot reach. This, too, is part of the trade. The unshakable mark of his work carried on his skin like ink. He begins the slow walk home. His house is not far. A narrow building tucked near the well, with a small garden patch and a roof that sometimes leaks in spring. It is not grand, it is not clean, but it is his. And inside waits the one moment of softness in his entire day. The meal. Inside the home smells of lentils and barley. His wife, already seated at the low table, glances up. She does not ask if he is hungry. She simply gestures to the bowl beside her and nods. The children, if there are any still awake, whisper drowsily in the corner, half curled against each other like dogs at a hearth. He sits. The wooden stool creaks beneath him. His shoulders protest as he shrugs off the apron. The bowl before him is simple, a stew thickened with bread crusts and onions, steam rising in gentle spirals. He takes the first bite without comment, the second with a longer breath. They do not speak much, not now. There is a rhythm to this meal, a tempo established over years of repetition. Each of them eats slowly, steadily. Between bites, the blacksmith shifts his feet, rolls his neck, stares at the fire. He's not thinking of iron now. He's thinking of weight, the kind that lives in the bones. It's not exhaustion in the dramatic sense. It's not collapse. It's the deeper fatigue that comes from a life of motion, from standing for 12 hours, from lifting and striking and shaping and squinting. His hands don't tremble, but they rest heavier now on the rim of the bowl. His breath moves slower. His awareness shifts inward. When the food is gone and the bowls are stacked, the blacksmith rises again. There's one more thing to do before sleep. He steps into the smaller room near the back. Not quite a chapel, but not just a room. A quiet space, a space for stillness. It's here that he keeps the small carved cross gifted to him years ago, the one made by a travelling monk who once needed a new buckle mended. The wood is worn smooth from his fingers, not from idolatry, from use. He does not speak elaborate prayers. He was never taught Latin, and the village priest only visits once a week. But he bows his head, he closes his eyes, and he names the things that mattered that day. Thanks for a safe fire. Thanks for strong tools. Thanks for the boy who fetched water without being asked. Thanks for the way the rain stayed off the roof. Thanks for one more day. It isn't worship in the way kings might approve. It's something smaller, something quieter. The kind of belief that is folded into habit, like shaping iron. Back in the main room, the hearth is down to coals. The family settles. The mat on the floor is spread. The blanket, rough, patched, but warm, is laid atop. The blacksmith removes his boots, rubs his arches, stretches once, and lies down. The floor is hard. The sounds of the forge still ring faintly in his ears. Phantom clangs, imagined hisses. He scratches at the soot along his forearm and watches the ceiling until his breath slows. Sometimes, before sleep, he replays the day in reverse. Not because he must, but because the order comforts him. A mental inventory. Shoes finished, nails stacked, armor repaired, tools cleaned, fire banked, and finally sleep. But fatigue in this world is not just bodily, it's spiritual too. There is the fatigue of being depended upon, the fatigue of being misunderstood by those who only see the finished product, never the hours behind it. The fatigue of knowing that should the forge collapse, the village would limp for months. The blacksmith carries all of that, and yet he rises again each morning, not out of glory, not for riches, but because the work is there, and the work is good. His rituals, then, are not luxuries. They are necessities, anchors, the cleaning of tools, the soft meal, the moment before the cross, the counting of tasks. Without them, the days would blend too easily, the body would burn too fast, the mind would dull too quickly. These rituals preserve him, quietly, steadily. They are not unlike the shaping of iron, deliberate, hot, and necessary. As the blacksmith drifts asleep, the forge across the lane cools fully. The last ember dies, tucked beneath cold ash. The bellows are still. The tools sleep where they were hung. But tomorrow, they will wake again. So will he. And when he does, he will repeat each step. Not because he must, but because, in a world ruled by lords and law, fire and famine, the rituals of one blacksmith stand as a small, stubborn form of control, a way of saying, I am still here. I still shape. I still rise. And that is enough. By the time the sun clears the treetops and begins to warm the thatched rooftops of the village, the forge is already open and the blacksmith is at work. But he is not alone in the world. Though the blacksmith trade may feel like an isolated one, filled with fire, noise, and hours of inward focus, it is, in truth, deeply embedded in the life of the village. He is not a solitary figure behind closed doors. He is a node in the larger web of rural community, a constant, a neighbor, a name everyone knows. The rhythm of village life unfolds around him like the tolling of a slow bell. Every person plays a role. The baker rises before the light and has loaves on shelves by mid-morning. The shepherd moves quietly along the ridge, his whistle sharp against the wind. The miller argues over water rights. The reeve counts grain in the storeroom. The priest recites his morning prayers with one eye half closed. The children feed hens, chase each other barefoot through the dirt, and tug on apron strings. And the blacksmith, he hammers. From morning until evening, he shapes the metal that will hold the village together. He knows every neighbor by name, though he rarely uses them. In small communities, names are less important than faces, voices, gestures. He can tell who is walking down the lane simply by the sound of their gait. The shuffle of old Thomas with a twisted ankle, the brisk step of the midwife, the slap of bare feet belonging to one of the baker's 6 boys. He knows who will come asking for favors and who will arrive already bartering. He knows who leaves their tools too long in the rain, who pays in coin, who pays in honey, cloth, or dried fish. Every knock on his door is familiar, and nearly every day brings one. Can you mend this hinge? Do you still have nails? My latch is sticking. The scythe edge won't hold. Sometimes they bring their tools in hand. Other times they point and gesture, describing the damage with shaped fingers and hopeful eyes. The blacksmith rarely speaks much. He listens, nods, turns the object over in his palm. If it can be fixed, he'll say, "Come back tomorrow." If not, he shrugs once, and that's usually enough. In return, he doesn't just receive coins, though coins are welcome. He accepts food, mended clothes, help from a son. Once, he was gifted a lamb. Another time, a pair of rough woven gloves too large for his hands. He wears them anyway, on cold mornings. It's not charity, it's understanding. In this place, everyone depends on everyone else. No person survives alone, not the widow, not the priest, not the blacksmith. And yet, for all the intimacy of village life, there are moments when the blacksmith must look beyond its borders. That is where the guild comes in. The guild is not a thing one sees every day. It's not a building with a sign. It's not a meeting held in the square. The guild exists both near and far, a network of men who share the trade, bound by oaths, expectations, and mutual benefit. The blacksmith in this village is part of it, even if he rarely travels. He knows the guild by the seal pressed into wax when shipments arrive, by the rules he follows, even when no one watches, by the memory of the time he stood in a town hall, offered his name, and received his mark. To be in the guild is to have legitimacy, protection, reputation. It also means obligation. There are prices the guild expects its members to honor. No undercutting, no fraud. If he makes a defective piece and someone is harmed, the guild may be called to investigate. If a traveling smith sets up too close, offering cheaper work, the blacksmith can appeal to the guild for support. And once a year, he must send a letter or pay someone to carry it to the nearest chapter house. A list of his work, his apprentices, if any, a small fee, usually in coin or iron. He does not resent the guild. It is, in many ways, the only larger system that recognizes his worth. The Lord may not care how many nails he makes. The taxman might only ask for coin. But the guild knows what it means to keep a forge going, to shape without rest, to work through illness, to pass on knowledge. The guild respects the fire, and that means something. In the village, this affiliation grants him quiet deference. When arguments arise over the price of a plough blade, over whether a customer truly paid for that extra bolt, his word carries weight. He is not a judge, but he is listened to. That respect doesn't come from charm. The blacksmith is not charming. It comes from presence. He is always there. Beyond the formal structures of guilds and customers, the blacksmith also participates in something subtler, the unwritten calendar of village life. He knows, without needing to be told, when it's time for planting and when tools must be sharpened. He knows that 2 weeks before the harvest, the repair jobs will flood in, that on feast days, the village will be quiet, and on market days, frantic. He adjusts his rhythm to match the community. His forge is louder before winter, quieter in the rains. During epidemics, it falls silent altogether. But even when he is not striking, he is present, sweeping, sorting, watching. Some days, he will step outside and speak softly with the shepherd. On others, he'll mend a latch for a neighbor without being asked. He does not smile much, but he shows up. And in a world where nothing is guaranteed, that counts for more than anyone says aloud. Children are curious about him. They linger near the doorway of the forge, whispering, daring each other to peek in. They call him names behind their hands. Firefather, Iron Eater, Smoke Man. He pretends not to hear. Sometimes, when he's in a good mood, he leaves the door open wider, lets them watch from the lane as the hammer falls. They stare with wide eyes, mouths slightly open, as sparks leap from the anvil. They see magic. He sees practice. Once in a while, one of those children will grow older and ask to learn. Not every village can afford to train apprentices. Not every blacksmith wants one. But when the time is right, when the village has need, when the boy shows patience, the blacksmith nods. He does not explain much. He shows how to hold the hammer, how to stoke the coals, how to listen. And slowly, over months, the rhythm of one life becomes two. The boy takes on simple tasks, then complex ones, and eventually he learns what it means to strike true. The guild will need to be informed, a letter sent, a seal pressed. But that can wait. What matters is the rhythm. That rhythm of the forge, the village, the guild, is not written in stone. It shifts with the seasons, with the age of the smith, with the needs of the people. But at its core, it is always the same. Work, rest, community, honor. Each day folds into the next with quiet consistency, and the blacksmith, with all his soot and silence, remains one of its steadiest keepers. By twilight, the forge door is shut again. The village hums with soft laughter, with clinking bowls, with footsteps fading into evening. And though few would call him friend, all would notice if he disappeared. He does not seek praise. He does not need thanks. But he knows who he is. And in the quiet between one hammer strike and the next, in the warmth of iron and the weight of his tools, he finds enough. The day is nearly done, but it isn't over. Twilight seeps across the village, sliding between rooftops and casting long shadows down the dirt-packed lanes. Chickens roost. The tavern door creaks open. A faint smell of wood smoke rides the wind. In the forge, the light is low, not from neglect, but from timing. The fire has been banked, not extinguished. The coals are alive but subdued, held in reserve for any last work that lingers. And there is always last work. The blacksmith is still awake, still standing. His sleeves are rolled again. His hands, calloused, darkened, burned in half-moons, rest beside a rusted hinge and a bent iron latch, both left at his door after sunset. He hadn't planned to repair anything more tonight, but plans are flexible and the cold is coming. That makes people nervous. The latch is easy, just a twist, a file, a test against the sidewall. The hinge is worse, nearly snapped from the center, as if yanked violently or warped by time. He'll need to heat it. He sighs once and reaches for the bellows. The forge answers with a soft breath, a glow that rises slowly from the ashes like an animal stretching in the dark. For the briefest moment, the orange light flickers against his face and he looks older, not just tired, aged. He's been doing this for years, decades perhaps. And now, as winter approaches, he feels it in places he used to ignore. His back, his wrists, the base of his neck. He does not complain. But the season sharpens things, reminds him that his own joints, like the hinge before him, can stiffen if neglected. Outside, the air is shifting. Not yet snow, but something close. The trees rustle differently. The soil feels harder underfoot. The children, who once loitered near the forge after supper, now vanish before dusk. The animals grow quiet earlier. Even the sky, that wide, aching dome, seems lower, more somber. Each sign whispers the same truth. Winter is almost here. And in winter, the blacksmith's world narrows. Not in purpose, he's needed more than ever, but in movement. The days are shorter. The cold bites into metal. Iron becomes reluctant to bend. The forge eats through wood and charcoal faster. Tools crack from the chill if cooled too quickly. Customers knock more often, but with greater urgency. A snapped plough just before snowfall. A broken gate when wolves prowl near the edges. A cart axle frozen in place. Each need is sharper, more immediate. The blacksmith prepares for it all, now, while the air is still only cool, not cruel. He checks the woodpile behind the forge. It's not enough. He'll need to barter with the cooper or the woodsman. Maybe offer nails or a fresh hoe blade in exchange for a few more cords. He tests the leather straps on the bellows, still strong. The roof, holding, but barely. One beam sags near the eaves. He'll patch it himself. He always does. The cold has a way of exposing what's weak. In buildings, in tools, in men. So he reinforces everything. Quietly. Tonight, after mending the hinge, he sharpens a chisel left too long in a damp corner. Then he oils the tongs, checks the file rack, and wraps the thinner tools in cloth to keep the frost from biting them. Not everyone does this, but he does, because he's seen what happens when people forget. Tools that shatter instead of bend, blades that rust before spring, fingers lost to haste. The forge, for all its heat, cannot fight winter alone. In the corner of the forge, a small iron ring dangles from a peg. It looks unimportant. No markings, no shine. Just a ring, forged in silence. But the blacksmith's hand lingers near it more often these days. He made it for his son, years ago. Or rather, for the idea of a son. One who might someday stand where he stands, take up the hammer, learn the rhythm of the coals. The boy never grew into it. Some children leave, others fall ill. Life is not neat, and the ring has hung here untouched ever since. Not as a monument, just there, a piece of potential that never found its shape. Now, the blacksmith looks at it sometimes when the wind howls. He does not regret, but he remembers, and he works. As the hinge cools and the anvil quiets, the village outside slips further into stillness. A dog barks once, far away. A shutter creaks, then silence. These are the hours when memory speaks loudest. He remembers winters when the forge was younger, when he could work without aching. He remembers customers now buried in the churchyard. Tools he once made that no longer exist. A scythe blade that fed 3 generations before it broke. In some way, he has outlived almost everything he's made. That's the nature of the craft. To create over and over, knowing that iron fails, that wood rots, that nothing, not even the strongest blades, escapes time. And yet, he makes. He wakes early. He heats the fire. He bends metal. He shapes nails, hinges, tools, horseshoes, and hope, because people need it, and because he needs them. A village without its smith would fray. A smith without his village would vanish. It is a quiet pact, renewed daily without words. He places the mended hinge beside the doorway, tied with a strip of cloth, so the owner will see it come morning. He wipes the anvil, banks the fire one final time. The forge dims, but it is not empty. Every mark on the wall, every dent in the anvil, every scratch on the bench holds a story, not of conquest or glory, but of use, of service, of continuity. This is what legacy looks like when no one's watching. He steps outside, breath clouding faintly in the dark. The stars are pale, almost shy. The moon is low. A thin crust of frost coats the grass. He pulls his cloak tighter and walks home slowly, savouring the silence. The house is quiet. His wife sleeps. The hearth is low. He does not speak. He removes his boots, washes his hands in the basin, and lies down beside the embers. Sleep will come, and with it, another day. The fire is out now. The hammer rests. The forge is silent. But even in stillness, the memory of heat remains. In the walls, in the anvil, in the air itself. Just as the blacksmith's presence lingers, even after the door has closed and the village has gone quiet. This was just one day, ordinary in every way, and yet entire lives moved through it, shaped by what was made, mended, or held together. The blacksmith does not speak often, but his work speaks for him. It creaks in hinges. It swings with the weight of a door. It guides the plough through earth. It holds the shoe to the horse. It rests beneath the hand of every farmer, carpenter, brewer, and reeve who trust the strength of what they hold. His voice is in the ring of metal on metal. His rhythm is the slow, patient breath of the bellows. His story is not told in battle or song, but in daily service, quiet, firm, and enduring. He is the keeper of iron, the witness of wear, the one who watches as things break and chooses to fix them. In the medieval world, where life could be brief and hard, the blacksmith represented something unusual, permanence, not in his person, for he too would pass, but in his practice, his place, his purpose. He was the hinge on which village life turned, not the centre, but essential. And so, even though his name may be lost to time, the impression of his life endures, in tools passed down, in techniques preserved, in the memory of a world held together not by grand ideas, but by steady hands and glowing coals. When you think of the medieval age, you might picture kings and castles, wars and treaties, saints and scribes. But between all of them stood men like him, Figures in soot and silence who made things work. Without them, even the grandest dreams would have rusted away. So tonight, as the stars turn slowly above the sleeping earth, as your breath slows, as your thoughts drift, you can rest in the knowledge that once, long ago, a blacksmith stood watch by firelight, and the world, small as it was, held its shape just a little longer because he did.